In 1986, 15 children boarded a school bus for a field trip and were never seen again. No crash, no wreckage, no trace. But nearly 4 decades later, when a forgotten bus is found buried deep in the woods of Morning Lake, so is a survivor. And what she remembers will unravel a truth more terrifying than anyone imagined. Before we start, hit subscribe to help uncover stories they tried to bury, and make sure no name stays forgotten. The fog had settled thick over Halstead County like a lid no one dared lift. It clung to the pines, curled under porch lights, and silenced the sound of tires on asphalt. You could drive a whole mile and not realize you passed your own childhood. That's how memories vanished around here, quietly and without protest. It was just past 7 a.m. when the call came. Deputy Sheriff Lana Whitaker had just poured her first coffee when the dispatch crackled through. Possible discovery out by Morning Lake Pines. Construction team digging for septic tank unearthed what they think is a school bus. Plates match a long-closed case. Lana stood frozen in the silence of her kitchen, the mug warming her palm. Her other hand reached automatically for the notepad she always kept near the toaster. But she didn't need to write it down. She knew the case by heart. 15 children, 1 bus driver, vanished in 1986. They were students from Halstead Ridge Elementary, her school, her grade, her classmates. She'd been homesick that day, chickenpox, and for nearly 40 years, she'd carried that small, strange guilt like a splinter beneath her skin. She slid the untouched coffee into the sink, grabbed her keys, and left the house without locking the door. The drive to Morning Lake was quiet and slow, the fog dulling sound and stretching time. Pines rose on either side of the narrow 2-lane road like patient sentinels. Lana passed the old ranger station, now abandoned, and turned onto the overgrown service road that had once led to the summer nature camp the kids were headed for. She remembered how excited they'd all been. The last field trip before summer break. A lake, a fire pit, and new cabins built by volunteers. She remembered the photos in the yearbook, smiling faces pressed against the bus windows. Kids with Walkmans, cartoon backpacks, disposable cameras. She remembered them all. When she arrived, the construction crew had already cleared a perimeter. The yellow of the bus was visible in patches beneath the mud, dull, cracked, and half-crushed under the weight of the years. A backhoe stood motionless beside it like a guilty beast that had just unearthed a grave. "Ma'am?" The site foreman greeted her, removing his hard hat. "We didn't touch anything once we saw what it was. You'll want to see this." Lana nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They had cleared one side of the vehicle enough to open the emergency exit door. A sour, earthy smell hung in the air, and inside was dust, mold, and the brittle decay of time. The seats were still in place. Some of the seat belts were latched. A pink lunchbox sat on the floor beneath the 3rd row. A child's shoe lay on the back step, covered in dried moss. But no bodies. The bus was empty. That made it worse somehow. A hollow monument. A question mark buried in dirt. Lana stepped inside, her boots creaking on the warped floor. The air was stale and heavy. As she reached the front, she saw it. Taped to the dashboard, barely faded. A class list. Written in the looping, cheerful handwriting of Ms. Delaney, the homeroom teacher who had vanished with them. 15 names, all ages 9 to 11. At the bottom, someone had scrawled a message in a different hand. Darker, sloppier. Written over top in red marker. "We never made it to Morning Lake." Lana stepped back out of the bus. The air colder now. Somewhere behind her, a bird called out, but it sounded more like a warning than a greeting. She turned to the site foreman, her voice flat. "Seal off the area. No one touches anything else until the state team gets here." "Yes, ma'am." She looked back at the bus, framed by pines and silence. They were supposed to be gone for 2 days. Instead, They never came back. And now, after nearly 4 decades, the bus had returned without them. But someone had been here. Long enough to write that note. Long enough to leave behind a message. The old Halstead County Records building smelled of mildew and lemon cleaner. Its ceiling fans spun lazily, like they were waiting for the rest of the county to catch up. Lana stood at the counter, her fingers drumming on the wood as the clerk retrieved a case box from the archives. It had been 20 minutes since she left the bus site, but her hand still felt dirty with its dust. "Here we are," the clerk said, sliding the file forward with both hands like it might fall apart if mishandled. Field Trip 6B, Halstead Ridge Elementary, May 19, 1986. Sealed after 5 years. No updates. Lana nodded and carried the heavy box to one of the side desks. She opened the lid slowly, as if afraid something would leap out. Inside, photos of the children, Xeroxed class rosters, a list of personal items reportedly packed for the trip, and at the very bottom, a report stamped in red. Missing persons, presumed lost. No evidence of foul play. That stamp had haunted the town for decades. No evidence, no foul play, no children. But Lana had always suspected there was more. Everyone had. The bus driver's name was Carl Davis, a part-time employee, recently hired, barely vetted. He had no wife, no children, and had reportedly skipped town shortly after the disappearance. He was never found either. And then there was the substitute teacher. Ms. Delaney was sick that week. In her place, M. Atwell, a woman no one remembered hiring. The records listed her address, but it was now an overgrown lot on the edge of town. She'd never been seen again either. Lana leaned back in her chair, staring at the photocopied class photo. She still remembered their names, their laughter in the halls, their little backpacks swinging as they raced toward the yellow bus in the parking lot. She traced a finger over one face in particular, Nora Kelly. Wide green eyes, a missing tooth, and a pink ribbon tied in her hair. Nora had lived 2 houses down from Lana back then. They had shared popsicles on the curb every summer. The photo made Lana's chest ache, until a knock snapped her back into the present. Deputy Harris stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "Sheriff, you need to see this." They were at the hospital 15 minutes later. A woman had been found by a fishing couple half a mile from the dig site. She was barefoot, dressed in tattered clothes that didn't match any local brands. She was dehydrated, malnourished, and barely conscious, but she was alive. The nurse stopped Lana outside the exam room. "She's stable, no ID, mid-30s. Keeps saying she's 12 years old. We thought it was trauma until she gave us her name." The nurse handed Lana a clipboard. Scrawled across the top in trembling handwriting, "Nora Kelly." Lana's knees nearly buckled. "She says she was on a school field trip," the nurse added gently, "and that she's been trying to get home ever since." The woman inside the room sat up slowly when Lana entered. Her hair was long, tangled, her face drawn and pale. But the eyes, they were unmistakable. Green, wide. Lana stopped at the foot of the bed. "Nora?" The woman blinked. Her eyes welled up. "You got old," she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. Lana felt her throat close. You remember me?" Nora nodded. "You had chicken pox. You were supposed to come too." Tears burned in Lana's eyes. She walked slowly to the chair beside the bed and sat, too stunned to speak. "They told me no one would remember," Nora whispered. "That no one would come." "Who told you that?" Lana asked gently. Nora looked past her, out the window. Then she turned back, voice a whisper. "We never made it to Morning Lake." The sun had dipped behind the trees by the time Lana drove back to the sheriff's office. The golden hour light filtered through the blinds, casting long stripes across her desk. She didn't sit down. Instead, she stood staring at the whiteboard she had cleared that morning. It now held 15 names, tacked up in 2 neat columns, Above them, in red marker, Morning Lake Field Trip, May 19, 86. Below, a new heading. Nora Kelly, survived, returned. She circled Nora's name, then added, found May 5th, 2025, near Morning Lake site. Appears to have aged normally, believes she's 12 years old. No memory of events after the bus left school, repeats the phrase, we never made it to Morning Lake. Lana exhaled slowly. Something didn't make sense. If Nora had been alive all this time, where had she been? And what about the others? By 9 p.m., she was back at the hospital. The doctors had run basic evaluations. No signs of injury beyond sun exposure, dehydration, and psychological trauma. Her DNA was being processed, but Lana didn't need the test. It was her. She was sure. Nora had been moved to a quieter wing. When Lana entered, she found her curled beneath a blanket, staring at a small paper cup of water on the tray. Hi again, Lana said softly. Nora looked up. Her face still held the gaunt fragility of someone too long away from the world, but her voice was clearer. You believe me, don't you? I do, Lana said. Nora gave a sad smile. Most don't. Lana took a seat. Can I ask you something? Nora nodded. Do you remember the bus ride? Nora looked down. Only the beginning. The driver didn't talk much. He wasn't our usual guy. And there was someone else, a man, waiting by the fork in the road. Lana leaned forward. Do you remember what he looked like? Not really. I think he had a beard. I just remember what he said. What was that? Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. He said the lake wasn't ready for us yet, that we'd have to wait. Lana felt the chill crawl up her arms. He got on the bus, Nora said. And then, I don't know. I woke up in a barn, but it wasn't a barn anymore. It was like a home. But the windows were covered, and the clocks were all wrong. What do you mean? They always said it was Tuesday, even when it wasn't. They wouldn't let us talk about before. We had to use new names. Lana tried to keep her face neutral. Who's they? Nora swallowed. There were two of them at first, a woman and the man. She called him Mr. Avery. I don't know if it was his real name. She disappeared after a few months. I think she got sick. Do you know where the barn was? Nora shook her head. They moved us around, sometimes in vans. We weren't allowed to look outside. They said people had forgotten about us, that it was better this way. Lana sat in stunned silence. Some of the others, they forgot. About school, about home, Nora said. But I didn't. I never did. Lana reached into her coat pocket and slid something onto the tray. A faded yearbook photo. Nora picked it up and stared. That's me, she whispered. And that's Caleb. And Marcy. And... She stopped, her eyes filling with tears. You kept this? Lana nodded. I never stopped. Nora clutched the photo to her chest. Later that night, Lana sat alone in her truck parked outside the old Halstead barn on County Line Road. She'd remembered something from Nora's description, about the clocks, the way the windows were boarded. This barn had belonged to a man named Frank Avery. He died in 2003, but he had a son. Name, Martin Avery. Last known address, unknown. Lana stepped out of the truck and stared at the silhouette of the barn in the moonlight. The wind rustled the grass. A loose door creaked softly. She moved toward the side of the building, her flashlight casting long shadows across the dry wood. Something glinted near the base of the barn wall. Metal. She crouched and found it. A small bracelet tangled in the weeds. She picked it up. Plastic. Faded purple. Etched with a child's name in blocky handwriting, K-I-M-I. Lana's breath caught. Kimi Leung, one of the 15. A quiet, artistic girl who loved cartoons and wrote her name on everything. Lana stood slowly, her heart pounding. The past wasn't just whispering anymore. It was screaming. The bracelet was still in Lana's hand when she returned to the station just after midnight. She didn't turn on the overhead lights, just the lamp on her desk, casting a pool of amber across the surface. The rest of the office remained quiet and still. She placed the bracelet beside the class photo, lining it up with the face of Kimi Lung. She'd been 10 years old, wore glasses, loved dinosaurs. And now, this. Found beside a barn linked to a man with no current address. Lana picked up the landline and dialed the Texas Missing and Unsolved Cold Case Unit. She left a detailed message, requesting a full report on Martin Avery and his last known associates. She didn't expect an answer until morning. But something was happening now, and she couldn't sleep with ghosts pressing in at the windows. By sunrise, the Morning Lake dig site was buzzing with quiet urgency. More of the earth around the buried bus had been cleared, and a second team from the state's Historical Preservation Unit had arrived to document the excavation. Less because of its history, and more because of what it now represented. Lana stood beside the emergency exit, arms folded, watching the forensic techs catalog every inch of the hollowed shell. She had barely slept. Her mind was too loud with memory and unease. "Sheriff," one of the investigators called, lifting a sealed evidence sleeve. "You're going to want to see this." She walked over. The tech, a man in his late 40s with square glasses and a quiet voice, held the plastic pouch carefully. Inside was a photograph. Color, slightly curled at the edges, but not aged like it should have been. Lana frowned. Where was it? Wedged behind the metal paneling above the back left window. Looked recently placed, honestly. She took the photo and studied it. It showed a group of children, maybe 8 or 9 of them, standing in front of what looked like a low wooden building. A barn? A lodge? It was hard to tell. The siding was weathered, the windows boarded. The kids' expressions were strange, blank, not frightened, not smiling, just absent. A few of the faces were unmistakable. Marcy, Kimi, Caleb, and there, in the center, Nora, her green eyes wide but vacant. But Lana's stomach dropped as she noticed something else. Behind the children, barely visible in the shadows of the doorway, was a man. Tall, bearded, his face mostly obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. She flipped the photo over. There was writing on the back. The Chosen, Year 2. No date, no location, just those words. Back at the station, Lana laid the photo beside the ghost notebook and her growing collection of names and fragments. Year 2. That meant they had been held for longer than she dared imagine. She opened a county map and began cross-referencing all Avery-owned properties, abandoned buildings, and old religious sites in the area. One caught her eye. Riverview Camp, an old summer retreat for children, purchased in 1984 by a private family trust. The land records had been scrubbed. The property had remained off-grid since the early 90s. It sat at the edge of the national forest, 30 miles from the bus site. Lana circled it in red ink. That afternoon, she brought the photo to Nora. The moment the image touched her hands, Nora gasped. Her fingers trembled. "This was after the first winter," she said softly. "We were made to pose once a season, to show progress." She looked up, tears forming in her eyes. "That building, it's where they kept us the longest." "Do you know where it is?" Nora shook her head slowly. "We weren't allowed outside without blindfolds, but I remember sounds, a river, a whistle at sunset, and the air, it always smelled like burning pine." Lana's mind clicked into gear. Riverview Camp was named for its proximity to a river bend, and there had once been a logging train that passed through that region. Its whistle used to echo for miles at dusk. "Do you recognize this man?" Lana asked, pointing to the shadowed figure in the photo. Nora hesitated. "That's not Mr. Avery," she whispered. "That's someone worse." "Worse?" They called him Father Elijah, but he wasn't a priest. He just liked the sound of it. Lana felt a chill work up her spine. What happened to him? Nora stared at the photo. I don't know. He just stopped coming one day, after year 3. Then we were moved again. Different place, different rules. Some didn't make it, some... She broke off, her voice cracking. Some forgot their own names. Lana placed a gentle hand on Nora's. You didn't forget, she said. You came back. Nora gave a fragile nod. But they're still out there. Some of them. I feel it. The others. She looked Lana directly in the eyes. They don't want to be found. That night, Lana drove north toward Riverview Camp. The road narrowed to gravel, and the trees thickened like walls. Fog gathered low on the ground, curling between roots and old fence posts. Her headlights caught a faded wooden sign half swallowed by vines. Riverview Youth Retreat. Private land. She parked at the edge of the old property line and stepped out. The silence was absolute. No birds, no rustling wind. Just the low hiss of distant water. Maybe a river. Lana took a flashlight and followed the overgrown path. Halfway down the trail, she saw it. The building from the photo. Its roof sagged. The porch was rotted through. But the walls were the same, wooden siding blackened at the corners. The windows were boarded from the inside. She approached slowly. Just before stepping onto the porch, she froze. In the dirt, fresh footprints. Small ones. A child's. Lana reached for her gun, her voice low, cautious. Hello? Anyone here? Silence. Then, from somewhere inside, the soft creak of floorboards. And a whisper. A child's voice. Just audible in the dark. You're not supposed to be here. Lana's hand gripped the flashlight tighter as she stepped slowly onto the warped porch. The wood groaned under her weight. Another whisper echoed from inside, low, almost playful. She came anyway. The door was cracked open. Just a sliver. No recent signs of forced entry, no new locks or chains. But the smell, earthy and metallic, drifted out like the air hadn't moved in years. Lana nudged the door with her foot. It opened with a long creak. Her beam swept across the room. Bare walls, dust-choked air, the skeletal remains of furniture long since abandoned. But what caught her eye first was what had been carved into the far wall. Words, children's names, some scratched shallow, as if rushed, others carved deep, angrily, again and again like someone was trying not to forget. Kimi Marcy Elijah, crossed out. Caleb Sam, question mark beside it, J.N. Nora, 3 times, one below the other. Lana swallowed hard. This wasn't just a hiding place. It had been a prison. She stepped forward, her boots stirring the dust. The wood beneath her creaked but held. She passed what had once been a table, now splintered and tipped against a wall. There was something beneath it. She crouched. A box, metal, rusted at the edges, but intact. She pried it open slowly. Inside were papers, yellowed and damp. But on top, a thin stack of Polaroids, bound by a rubber band. She lifted them out. Children again. But not posed this time. These were candid, taken from angles that made them feel wrong. Some were sleeping, some eating. One was crying in the corner of a narrow, windowless room. Each photo had a name written on the back, but not their real names. Dove. Glory. Silence. Obedience. The last photo was different. A child standing alone by a tree. Her face turned away, but her left arm was visible, and Lana saw what she was meant to. A bracelet, purple, plastic, the same kind she had found near the barn. Kimi. She flipped the photo. Disobeyed! Suddenly a soft creak behind her. Lana stood quickly, flashlight darting across the room. Hello? She called out. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to help. Silence, and then, softly from the second floor above, You're not like them. Lana turned toward the staircase, old and brittle but still holding. Slowly, she climbed each step, her breath shallow, hand hovering near her sidearm. At the top landing, she paused. One of the doors at the end of the hall was slightly open, a faint flicker of candlelight visible through the gap. She moved toward it. Inside, the air was warmer. Someone had been here. The walls were covered in children's drawings, charcoal and pencil, crude but deliberate. She scanned them, heart thudding. One drawing showed a line of children walking in the woods. Another, a man with no face, arms stretched wide like wings. A third showed a school bus, in flames, and on the ground below it, a row of small, identical headstones. Lana stepped back, dizzy. Her light shook in her hand. Then she heard it again. That voice, quiet and close. They told us not to draw. But we did anyway. She turned, and there he was. A boy, no older than 10, standing barefoot in the doorway, eyes dark, hair shaggy, pale, thin, dirt smudged across his cheek. "Who are you?" Lana asked, gently lowering the flashlight. The boy didn't answer right away. Then, "They called me Jonah, but that wasn't my name." Lana crouched, her voice steady. "Do you remember your real name?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "They took it." She nodded slowly. "It's okay. You don't have to remember it right now." "Are you here to take me away?" "I'm here to help," Lana said softly. "Are you alone?" Jonah looked at the floor. "No." He pointed behind her, toward the wall behind the old metal bunk beds. Lana stood and followed his gaze. There, etched faintly into the floorboards, nearly covered by dust, were more names. But these weren't carved by hand. They had been burned into the wood, with heat or time or something she couldn't quite explain. The wood around them was scorched, and beneath them, in black ink, was written, "Names we must not forget." There were 12 names. 3 were circled, and the rest were crossed out. Lana sat with Jonah in the back of her SUV, the boy wrapped in a heavy blanket, silent except for the soft rustle of the emergency thermal foil crinkling with each movement. His eyes, gray, distant, and far older than any 10-year-old's, stared out the window as if waiting for something to leap from the trees. They hadn't spoken much on the drive back. He hadn't asked where they were going. He hadn't asked why she had come. Only one thing seemed to matter to him. Are the others coming back too? Lana hadn't answered, because she didn't know. At the station, she gently ushered him into the back office, one she rarely used, and pulled the blinds shut. A local social worker was on her way, but Lana had insisted on being the one to talk to him first. She brought him a juice box, an old wool hoodie, and a set of photos she printed from the original yearbook, laminated and faded from time. Jonah sat with the photos in his lap. He traced a small finger over each face. "I remember her," he whispered. "That's Marcy." Then he tapped another. "And him, Sam. He always got in trouble. He wasn't good at staying quiet." He pointed to one more, Lana's own childhood face. "You were supposed to come." She smiled faintly. "I was, but I got sick." Jonah tilted his head. "That's lucky." Meanwhile, across town, the forensics team called in a discovery. They had found another photo buried beneath the rear floor panel of the bus, this one partially burned. It showed 4 children seated around a campfire. One of them, facing the camera directly, had dark skin and short hair. In the bottom corner, written in marker, "He stayed." He chose to stay. Lana stared at the photo. Something tugged at the edge of her memory. She pulled up the old roster again, mentally reviewing each name until she paused at one. Aaron Devlin. Age 11 at the time of the trip. Quiet, bright, a gifted chess player, always reading books far beyond his grade. She checked the county database. There was an A. Devlin listed in the town's electrical department. Age 49. No high school record on file prior to 1990. Moved into Halstead in 2004. Lived alone in a trailer outside of town. No listed next of kin. Lana stood slowly. She didn't believe in coincidences anymore. The trailer was perched at the edge of a gravel lot, half buried by pine needles, the door rusting at the hinges. A single bulb above the porch flickered faintly as Lana pulled up. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again. This time, a voice answered. Low, calm. I knew someone would come eventually. The door opened. The man who stood there looked older than his years. Gray streaks at the temples, eyes sharp and unreadable. He wore a simple shirt, flannel jacket, and work jeans. But there was something about the way he stood. Still, like someone waiting for judgment. Aaron Devlin? Lana asked. He didn't respond right away, then nodded once. I remember you, he said softly. You used to wear braids and a jean jacket with patches. Lana blinked. You remember me? We were in the same class. You had a green backpack with a silver zipper that always got stuck. Her heart skipped. Why didn't you come forward? Aaron stepped aside. Because not everyone wanted to leave. Inside, the trailer was meticulously clean. Sparse. A chessboard sat on a small coffee table. Bookshelves lined the walls, everyone filled with books on psychology, memory, and group behavior. I left the sanctuary in 1991, Aaron said, sitting carefully on the edge of the couch. I was 16. They let me go. Let you? I was the one who stayed when others tried to escape, the one who helped them keep order. I believed in it. For a long time, I thought it was safe there. Lana sat across from him, listening. But then things changed, he continued. After year 4, the group splintered. Elijah disappeared. The others began to rebel. Marcy ran. Caleb tried to fight back. I stayed. Not because I agreed, but because I was afraid of the outside. Lana's voice was steady. You could have helped find them. I was told the world had forgotten us, that our families had moved on. His voice broke slightly. When I finally left, I didn't know how to be anything other than quiet. He looked at her. But if you're here now, someone else must have come back. Lana nodded. Nora. Aaron's eyes flickered. She remembered? He whispered. After all this time? She never forgot. Aaron looked away toward the window, where dusk was just beginning to touch the treetops. I know where the others might be, he said. At least, where they were sent. After the fires. Fires? Aaron's hands clenched. There was an uprising. Some of the kids, older by then, they set part of the sanctuary ablaze. The group scattered. The younger ones were moved, split up, hidden under new names. He stood. They buried the truth in the woods, but I can take you there. That night, Lana met Nora in her hospital room and showed her the photo of the boy at the fire. Her breath caught. She stared at it like she was seeing a ghost. He stayed behind, she whispered. We thought he was gone, but he stayed, and they listened to him. She looked up. Do you think he remembers us? Lana nodded slowly. He remembers everything. The forest felt different now, not wild or free, but watchful, as though it remembered what had been done here. The leaves rustled, but the air was still. Each step Lana took on the narrow trail behind Aaron Devlin stirred the silence like dust. He hadn't said a word in the last mile, only walked with a quiet urgency, hands in the pockets of his jacket, eyes never straying from the path. Nora hadn't come. Her body too weak, her memories too raw, but Lana had promised to go, to see what was left, and to try to find who wasn't. They reached a small clearing just after noon. Surrounded by towering pines, a half-collapsed structure leaned against the hillside. The roof had caved in. Vines twisted up through the wooden frame like nature was trying to reclaim what man had hidden. "This was the original sanctuary," Aaron said quietly. "The first site. The place we were taken after the bus was diverted. It used to be bigger. There were 4 cabins, a lodge, and 2 underground cells." Lana paused. "Cells?" He nodded slowly. "They called them reflection rooms. But they were just pits. No light, no noise. Just the sound of your own thoughts until they stopped making sense." Lana's stomach turned. "They put kids in there?" "Marcy, Kimmy, Nora once, for saying the word school. I let it happen." His voice cracked. "I didn't stop it. I believed it was the only way we'd survive." Lana took a deep breath and stepped into the ruins. Inside, the smell of mildew and ash lingered faintly. Scorched floorboards, broken furniture. But in one corner, shielded beneath the collapsed beam, was something intact. A set of 3 small lockers, rusted but still upright. Aaron joined her. "These were ours," he said. "They made us keep only what they gave us. Blank books, uniforms, 1 spoon. But some of us hid pieces of who we used to be." Lana pulled open the first locker. Empty. The second, barely ajar, held only a torn shoe and a melted crayon. But the third, something was there. A bundle wrapped in cloth. She carefully lifted it out and opened it. Inside, a cracked cassette player, a child's bracelet, and a drawing, carefully preserved in plastic. It showed a girl standing on a hill, beneath a full moon. She wore a red ribbon, and in her hand was a sign. 3 words were written on it: "We are still here." Lana knelt, the drawing in her lap. It wasn't just a plea. It was a declaration. Aaron crouched beside her. "Nora drew that. I remember, the day before she ran." "You said they scattered the others," Lana whispered. "Where?" He pointed toward the ridge behind the old sanctuary. "There's a second trail. Hidden. That's where they moved the younger ones when the fire came. They didn't call it sanctuary anymore." "What did they call it?" Aaron's eyes darkened. "Haven." 2 hours later, Lana stood at the crest of the ridge. The sun was beginning to dip low, sending long beams through the trees. Ahead, partially camouflaged by moss and age, stood a concrete structure built into the hillside. There were no signs, no markings, no path, only a steel door rusted at the hinges. Aaron approached it slowly. This was where they took the ones too young to question, or the ones too broken to resist. It was quieter here, colder. They didn't teach anymore, just observed. Observed. They'd call it watching the fruit ripen. I didn't understand what they meant at the time, but it was about control, about waiting. "For what?" Lana asked. Aaron looked away. "For obedience, for full forgetting." He placed his palm on the cold metal. "There's a room inside, sealed, last I saw. They called it the garden. No lights, just voices. They made some of us stay in there until we stopped asking to leave." Lana shivered. "And what happened to the ones who didn't stop asking?" He didn't answer. They pried open the door with an emergency jack from Lana's truck. The air inside was damp and still. Her flashlight beam swept across cement floors, water-stained walls, and broken furniture. Scratches lined the walls. Names, symbols, short messages etched with fingernails, keys, or worse. But what stopped Lana cold was a small door to the right. A plaque hung crookedly above it. The only word on it: garden. She turned to Aaron. He nodded slowly. "Some of them are still alive, Sheriff," he said quietly. "I don't know where, but I know it in my bones." He stepped back, his voice a whisper, "Because I hear them in my dreams, calling each other by the names they weren't supposed to say." Back at the hospital, Nora awoke just after midnight, heart pounding, breath shallow. The fluorescent lights flickered gently overhead. A nurse entered, startled by her expression. You okay, sweetie? Nora stared at her. I had a dream, she whispered, but it wasn't mine. The nurse leaned closer. There was a room, Nora continued. No light, cold walls, and someone whispering. She swallowed hard. They were saying my name. The garden wasn't a room. It was a void. Lana stood just inside the threshold, her flashlight beam trembling as it pierced the heavy dark. The walls were close, the ceiling low, and the air, thick and unmoving, felt as though it hadn't been breathed in decades. No furniture, no windows, just concrete. But the smell, that same faint mix of damp earth, old metal,